Hello and welcome to Purser Explores the World. I'm James Purser. In this episode, we're going to be taking the DIY theme that we explored last time, and we're going to see how it can be harnessed on a much larger scale, specifically in times of disaster. Almost 9 months ago, at 3:45 in the afternoon, Japan suffered the most devastating earthquake and tsunami event in its long history. Nearly 16,000 people were confirmed killed in the earthquake and the waves that followed, some of which reached upwards of 40 metres tall and flowed almost 10 kilometres inland. As if that wasn't enough, Japan also suffered its worst peacetime nuclear incident, with the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant suffering a number of explosions and meltdowns due to a cascading failure, with even the backup cooling system being knocked offline by the oncoming tsunami after the earthquake had taken out the primary systems. This has rendered a 30-kilometre area around the plant declared a no-go area, led to the largest release of radioactive material into the Pacific Ocean in history, which, by the way, will reach the US West Coast in only a few years, and poses ongoing problems with regards to the safety of the water supply for surrounding areas, including Tokyo. While the government has struggled to deal with the problem at the plant itself, there has been a growing dissatisfaction with the information being released regarding radiation levels in various parts of the country, including the capital, Tokyo. However, this being the age of the DIY, a group has sprung up to fill the gap. I'll let Peter Franken from Safecast tell you about that himself.
Basically, we started Safecast, in the aftermath of the nuclear disaster in March. I think 1 or 2 days after the explosions happened, a good friend of mine, Joe Ito, and myself had a conversation about getting some Geiger counters to go and measure outside. Mm-hmm. And then we realized there were no Geiger counters. And another person by the name of Sean Bonner in LA, who was also a good friend of Joey's, got into a conversation that, maybe we can do something with the internet and share data that other people have gathered about the disaster so that everybody can kind of see what is happening. So that was kind of the start. Then what happened is that when we start, actually, I think about a week or 10 days after that, we did have the website up. That was set up by a group of volunteers in the US by a small company called Uncork Studios, which kind of joined, had the similar idea, and we kind of joined forces. And then what we found out is after scraping data from various government sites and individuals, we noticed that the map was basically very, very sparsely populated. So we didn't really have lots of data that we could collect. So then in early April, we got together as a group for the first time. And then, we basically realized that we have no Geiger counters, data available is limited. So just aggregating it is not only going to make a difference. Then the idea came up to say that with the limited Geiger counters that we can put our hands on, can we mount them on a car and start driving around with the car and put a GPS modem on it and basically collect data as we drive and put it on the map.
Sort of like a radioactive version of street maps.
Absolutely. Same as Google, but then with radioactive measurements. So that was the basic idea. So easier said than done. So we spent about a week, myself with a few volunteers of a place called Tokyo Hackerspace, which is a small group of people here in Tokyo that basically do all kinds of things, but it includes people that can build their own hardware, write their own software, or are very good at just building anything, or we also have people that do cooking or all kind of other stuff. But basically, with a small group of volunteers, in about a week's time, we actually built the system that could be put on the car. And I'm not sure if you had a chance to see our website or. Yeah, so if you go to the website, the latest article we have on our blog actually has a link to a news segment that was broadcast recently on PBS NewsHour in the US. I would just, after this, I would recommend to see it. It's about 10 minutes. So if you do that, then you basically, people can kind of see the device, and it's a good 10-minute summary of what we're doing. Mm-hmm. but it has all the visuals. Okay, so basically we designed what we call a BGeigie. A BGeigie is a box that has the same dimensions of what is called a bento box. Bento box is Japanese for lunchbox,
Mm-hmm.
and they're sold in many colorful variations and patterns, but it's kind of the size of that, and that's why we called it the Bento Geiger system. So BGeigie for bento, BGeigie system.
Mm-hmm.
So in the box, we put in a GPS module, a small computer, an SD card, and batteries, and a Geiger counter. So this together basically automatically can record the radiation levels as you're driving. So we started that in mid-April, and we have been doing that ever since. So initially, we were very much reliant on a small group of volunteers here in Tokyo that, basically together we would drive up to Fukushima and start driving around.
Mm.
And as time passed, we were able to extend that, and we now have many volunteers all over Japan that are driving the same bento box system around. We have now maybe about 30 systems in rotation, and we have now collected about 1.5 million measurements as a result.
When you've been doing this, have you been working with the local authorities in sharing this information?
It's a good question. We have been primarily working independently. One of the drivers behind doing this is that people are looking to find independent data from what is officially published by the government.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we found that the data available from a government institution is very high level. It typically gives radiation levels for an entire city. And we found that people really want to know radiation levels around their neighborhood.
Mm.
Also, what is important to understand is radiation is not very much kind of a thing that radiates from the plant. It came down when the fallout happened.
Yeah.
It's not easy to predict where actually the radiation has come down. So literally, you will have to go and measure street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood, to actually check if anything came down in those areas. And that's also what we experienced when we went there the first time. We realized that radiation is very, very variable and not very easy to predict where it came down. So we found, early May, we found the first hotspots around Tokyo, which are now very well documented. But not far from Tokyo, there are areas that have relatively higher radiation. While we found areas very near to the plant had much lower radiation. So a very important thing is for people's own understanding is to actually know, in my area, what is the reality, and based on that, what do I want to do, or what precautions do I want to take?
If the government's releasing a lot of high, very large area sort of results as opposed to something granular, what's the reaction of the community been to what you guys are putting out?
Yes, the reaction from the community has been very positive in general. It's very simple. People are looking for information they can't find, and we're providing and helping them to measure that. More importantly, we're working with the community directly by having people measure with the system that we built for free. So nobody has to pay money. People can put it on their own car, and basically people in your own city are measuring it for you. So it also gives people kind of a feeling that this is not done by some organization that is invisible or anonymous.
Or trying to make a buck or something like that.
Yes, it's basically done by the people for the people. It's really kind of a crowdsourcing event where citizens are getting together to solve a problem that the government is not able to solve.
Now, you've got the BGeigie, which is your bento box based system. But on your website, I'm having a look, you've got an NGeigie and an iGeigie. Now, could you explain what those are?
Yes, it's a little bit confusing, but we call everything a Geigie.
Mm-hmm.
The BGeigie is basically the system that goes onto a car and is mobile. An NGeigie stands for Network Geiger Counter, and what that is a fixed sensor. It is positioned on a fixed location, and it automatically uploads the measurements onto the internet and can be seen on the map. So these sensors are really intended to see over a longer period of time if there are any fluctuations, either over time is radiation going down, or are there any new releases from the plant that can we detect them as they happen. So that
now these are real time, they broadcast in real time?
Yeah, these are real-time sensors. They automatically and immediately post the values onto the internet.
So what's the iGeigie?
Yeah, the iGeigie stands for iPhone Geigie, or a Geiger counter that can be docked onto your iPhone, and then it turns it into a Geiger counter. That's
Cool.
something I built in April as kind of a reaction to the fact that we couldn't get any Geiger counters, and I got my solder iron out, and I put this thing together to basically get attention from people to say that this is what we want, but we can't get it
Mm.
because. And the iGeigie was kind of a joke, but in the do-it-yourself community, many people have copied that idea. There's now many Geiger counters that you can either buy or build that use the same idea, where you basically can hook it up to your iPhone and use your iPhone as the Geiger counter.
Japan is mobile phone mad. Pretty much everybody has a mobile phone.
Yeah, everybody, including people, including seniors and kids. Everybody has a mobile phone. I believe it is over 90% or something like that.
So this sort of device should be, I'm assuming there'd actually be some sort of demand for this sort of device at the moment.
Yes, there's lots of interest, and as I mentioned, some people have taken this into as a commercial product. Some other people have made kits available, and on our side, we're working on something for the do-it-yourself community that can build a fairly similar device. One of the problems for these type of devices is that the sensors that go on it are in short demand. So the electronics are not really very tricky. The software is already available in the public domain. But the real problem is to put a good sensor on it. And sensors are not so cheap, but more importantly, they're not easy to get for people. So some of these have been built with sensors that are relatively insensitive. They work, but you need to wait a couple of minutes to get a reading.
Yep.
And the ones that are like the iGeigie, it has a sensor that is fairly good. The problem is it's not easy to get the components. So that's unfortunate. There's still the situation at the moment, as the device manufacturers are not able to increase the capacity so quickly. And,
now, with the iGeigie, I can't see a link to how you put it together. Where would we find a good description of how you put it together?
There is a website called www.igeigie.com, and on that there is some information available about it. And I'm yet to find time to publish the step-by-step manual for it, but I hope to do that over the coming weeks or so. But,
very cool.
Show you exactly how to do it, including the schematics and tips as to how to assemble it.
You've got this information. You've got it up there that people are actually using it. You're not just limited to Japan. There are people in the US who are helping you out as well, aren't there?
Absolutely. This is really what is amazing is this is a really international effort. And from the day we started, we had people here on the ground and people outside of Japan chip in. We now have people in Europe and in the US and in other locations all support what we're doing. In the US, we have people that are working on the back end of our website where we store all the data. We have people that are working on the front end, the blogs. We have people that are working on the visualizations. Recently, we have started to collaborate with the MIT Media Lab in Boston to work on that. Inside Japan, we have lots of volunteers that are literally doing the measurements or building the equipment. We also have collaborations with a few of the big universities here that are using our equipment as part of their research and measurement.
Do you have any ties to any groups in, say, Eastern Europe, where they've been having to deal with this sort of thing for a while now?
Actually, interestingly not. It's something that we really want to do. We're actually planning to do a world tour of our system. We started a world tour last month in the US, where we will have our system travel from city to city. So we hope that over the coming months we will plot the radiation in all major cities and all the roads that are interconnecting them in the US. And we plan to do the same thing in Europe, including a drive around the areas around Chernobyl or etc. Probably sometime in springtime next year. So we want to basically use the same system to compare the values outside of Japan but inside of Japan. We already have done a few locations. We have done some areas in the west coast of the US. We have done Hawaii. We have done Hong Kong, Peking, Seoul, and some locations in the Middle East.
What would you like to see? You've got your world tour next year, but what would be your ultimate goal for this system?
I think our ultimate goal is to basically use the system worldwide and basically create a baseline of radiation levels across the planet. Uh, this sounds like a very big target, and it is a big target. But there's a few things that we think can help in that. First of all, we're focusing on Japan. We have done tremendous amount of mapping in the north of Japan, and we hope to extend it to entire Japan. And sometime around spring next year, we want to be able to have covered most of Japan. We've still lots of work to do, but we have lots of things in the pipeline that can help us to make that happen. I think the most interesting thing is that the system we have is relatively easy to build. Doesn't cost actually lots of money to own, and people can easily share it. So, like in Japan, we started with one system. We now have quite a few of those systems on the road, and as time builds, you actually very quickly can scan the environment. So we have actually quite some interesting coming from outside of Japan, where people want to build the same system or actually buy it so that they can do the same thing in their area. So we hope that once we have a little bit more capacity and time next year to see how we can help those communities. And similar to Japan, once people get a hang of it, it can dramatically quickly expand itself across the planet. So that is kind of a viral way of doing environmental monitoring. But I think it is definitely a big goal and challenge. But
you could include these things in weather stations, couldn't you?
Yes, you could, and that's also a possibility. But I think really the power of what we're doing in Safecast is to leverage volunteers and communities that can do things themselves rather than having to rely on a government or a central organization to get it all right.
No. I was actually thinking of the smaller weather stations. I know there's a lot of weather geeks out there who set up their own small weather stations, keep track of everything.
Yes. Actually, in our group, we have a person. His name is Akiba, and his obsession in life is to build sensor networks that do environmental monitoring. And he's one of the architects behind all the hardware. And he's actually working on some of these things here in Japan. And I think all these things are very, very much feasible and doable. And this is just one aspect of environmental monitoring, but with the same type of system, we can measure other things in the environment that are equally interesting or important for our safety.
All right. Well, if somebody wants to find out more or wants to help out, where's the best place to go?
The best place to go is to contact us through Safecast. We have an email account. It's info@safecast.org. And if you have anything you want us to help with, or you want to participate, or you have some good ideas, that is the starting point. From there, if you want to volunteer, we would love to understand what you can do and see how it fits in what we're doing right now. Otherwise, we're also a volunteer organization, and we do pay everything from donations we get. So if you feel that we're doing a great job, but you don't have time to help out, please consider doing a donation. We have a donate button on our website, and you can donate to us through a PayPal donation. So that is also very much appreciated.
If you want to know more about Safecast or would like to donate, you can go to safecast.org, or you can follow the links I'll be putting up on the Angry Beanie Reddit. More about that later. Remember, you don't have to be in Japan to help out. They are looking for people the world over. Now, our next guest is also developing a project aimed at utilising the crowd to respond to a disaster. In this case, Dr. Paul Gardner-Stephen isn't trying to build new hardware to meet a need. Rather, he's attempting to utilise one of the most common personal electronic devices on the planet to rebuild communication networks in areas where nothing has been left standing. I'll let Dr. Gardner-Stephen explain.
So the Serval project really came out of thinking that I did after the Haiti earthquake in January in 2010, and just it was quite clear to me the loss of communications capability was going to be a real problem for a country that was already really struggling to maintain law and order and have any effective response capability to a disaster of that kind of magnitude. And indeed, that was sort of what we saw played out. And I still remember there was a moment. I remember driving in the car and hearing about it, and hearing how the the airport had been knocked out, the roads had been knocked out, and the harbour had been knocked out, and there really just was no way that equipment just to enable the logistics to enable large-scale equipment deployment was really going to be able to happen in any hurry. And of course, that what law enforcement was available was really going to struggle to even be aware of crime happening, let alone be able to respond to it. And so that, unfortunately, is played out in Haiti with a great deal of lawlessness during the acute phase and following the disaster.
Haiti wasn't exactly a haven of technological, for phones and law and order in the first place, was it?
No, but it did have a functional cellular network.
Mm.
So at least, a police station somewhere out in the middle of, wherever, or even just, within the city of Port-au-Prince itself, would actually be able to, at least let other people know if there was some crime going on. So one particular story that I had related to me by someone in the medical field was, they'd be driving between these two hospitals that they were kind of working with, and on some occasions there were roadblocks. They weren't government roadblocks, they were basically thugs. And they just go through your car and take whatever they want, and you kind of be happy that you got away with your life and your car and whatever else they left. Mm-hmm. So that's some of the kinds of things that really happened as a result of this breakdown in communication. And apart from that, individuals on the ground weren't able to coordinate their actions, because it's the people living in an area that actually still provide the bulk of response in a disaster. So that kind of played out, and just remember thinking, like, mobile phones have got radios in them. They talk to phone towers. Why can't they talk to each other? And why can't we enable telephony without infrastructure? And so that's really what we set about doing sort of in the first half of last year, getting it to a very initial prototype stage, which we then demonstrated up in the Akarola Wilderness Sanctuary. And really from there, it's just been an accelerating process of developing the software and getting the funding and support that we need to be able to really drive it to, make it something which we hope actually that many people on a day-to-day basis will make use of.
So you're not looking at it just for disaster areas, for disaster hit areas, but you're also looking...
No.
Cool.
So, you've got fringe areas of mobile coverage, areas where there is no mobile coverage, developing countries where there might well be mobile phone coverage, but it's just too expensive for the local people to actually afford. Because essentially the cost of deploying a mobile phone tower in, for instance, off-grid Africa, and running it on an annual basis is actually much more, in fact, than it actually costs here. Even though labour prices are cheaper in developing countries, your defence costs for your asset are actually much higher. You have to put big fences up, security lights, increase your backhaul so you can have live video camera surveillance. You need a big generator and diesel, and then you need even bigger fences and everything so that people don't come and nick off with your diesel and generator.
So all the copper and everything else.
Yeah, exactly. So it ends up costing something like $250,000 a year to run a phone tower in off-grid Africa, which is just insane. When you start thinking, okay, one phone tower, let's say it's a 2G phone tower and it can do, 27-kilometre radius or something. So pi r squared gives you, let's work out what that area is. Okay, 27 times 27 times 3.14, just as a general gist. Okay, so it covers, say, 2,300 square kilometres. And you go, well, that kind of sounds like a lot, but that's in ideal conditions. And from that area, just to run that phone tower, not the rest of the network, just to run the phone tower, you need to extract $250,000 a year. And so if this is a rural area with relatively low population density and relatively low earnings, like if people are earning $1 a day, you need 250,000 person days per year from that area just to cover that part of it. And in reality, they'll charge 2 or 3 times that because they've got their backhaul and a whole pile of other stuff going on. So, that's one area that we're really hopeful that we can help. And whether it's impoverished school kids in South Africa getting access to educational materials, or whether it's farmers getting pricing from markets, there's a whole pile of things that are have the potential to be enabled by making low-cost communications available.
All right.
And of course, in war zones as well, where the infrastructure is actively being knocked out, we can actually let people still sort of organise themselves on the ground to maintain some semblance of normality.
All right. Well, so that's the background. And what exactly is the Serval project? Technically, what are you trying to do?
Okay, so we're taking off-the-shelf smartphones in the first instance, and we're making it so that you can dial someone's ordinary phone number, and if there is a path that can hop from phone to phone to phone to phone to get to that number, that you'll be able to call or SMS or transfer data to and from that other party. So basically what we're trying to do is replicate everything that you would do on a regular cellular network, but do it without the cellular network.
So basically each phone itself becomes a tower, a broadcast receiver.
Effectively. Yep, correct.
All right. So so this is just off the shelf. Anybody with a phone should be able to do this with the right software.
That's right. I mean, there are some issues in terms of, like on Android, to get the Wi-Fi into what's called ad hoc mode, which is what we're using at the moment. You need super user access on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And for iPhone, which we haven't ported to yet, there's issues there around, again, access to ad hoc mode. Symbian is actually going to be much easier for us to port to. That should just be fine. So it will kind of vary, and to some degree, what we hope actually is that as we release the software and more people begin to use it, that the mobile phone platforms will actually become a little more accommodating of the needs of the technology, because it's purely software issues. There's no hardware impediment in the phones. In actual fact, if we could change any software in the phone at all, we could actually reprogram the main radio that talks to the cell phone towers to actually talk to other phones on unlicensed spectrum. Doing that actually gets much greater distance between the phones, because at the moment we're using Wi-Fi, and you get the order of 100 meters or 200 meters in good conditions between phones, whereas if we use the 915 megahertz band with the radio in the phone, potentially in an urban area in and around buildings, half a kilometre to a kilometre would not be impossible. And in open country, 5 to 10 kilometres between phones would be completely realistic. I mean, you'd be talking something that would be, CB radio type range between phones, but of course we can do multi-hop, and we have the benefits of digital. What sort of quality do you get out of these calls? It sounds like a regular mobile phone call. Okay. It's all digital, so it's a case of the codec. I mean, if we wanted to, we could put some crazy wideband codec in and make it sound as good as a studio recording within the limits of the microphone and speaker of the phone. Mm-hmm. So how much bandwidth? I mean, with the wider area, how much bandwidth are you looking at in terms of data that people can use? We're not focusing on, if you like, internet access, because it turns out that internet access over a multi-hop mesh is actually quite nasty to do. So we're actually focusing very much more on, if you like, a higher value per bit thing. So voice obviously is the thing that telcos charge almost the most for. In actual fact, the thing that the most expensive data on the planet basically is SMS. And hence, by that, the most valuable. So, we can support, normal SMS type habits, and probably SMS, some photo transfer and those sorts of things fairly readily. But as I say, web browsing will be possible, but we're not intimately concerned with that, partly because it's not kind to the network, and it's lesser value. And this really is the key issue. It's lesser value than getting the voice and text. And with that, Twitter type social networking is very much on our plan to do. Okay, so you're doing this as a project by yourself. Have you got anybody else contributing to it? Yeah, so we now have a small team with support from the Shuttleworth Foundation and Flinders University. And yes, it's basically myself, a project manager, and let me get the calculations right here, probably the equivalent of 2 full-time developers in addition to that. Have you had any interest from so you got the Shuttleworth Foundation, which is run by Mark Shuttleworth over in London.
But have you had any
Yep.
interest from some of the bigger guys like Google or anybody like that?
No, what's been really bizarre is that we haven't. I've tried to get the attention of Google, and you would think that this would be right up their alley in terms of connecting the last few billion to digital services. In terms of, I mean, from their point of view, the possibility of getting ads in front of the last, 6 billion eyeballs. There's a whole pile of reasons why I think Google should be interested, but we haven't managed to actually get the attention of anyone in Google. Because it's the kind of thing that they could, if they wanted to, they could just fund. Very easily, and basically to take a punt on opening that entire market, and really getting their brand presence out there with Google and Android before anyone else can.
If somebody wanted to actually play with this, where should they go to find the stuff?
Okay, so there's a very early developer release which is about to be superseded on the Android market. But the best place to go, because it really is under active development on a daily basis, is to our GitHub repository.
Mm-hmm.
So github.com/Serval Project, or better yet, subscribe to the Serval-Project-Developers Google group. And also have a look around on developers.servalproject.org.
Okay, is there anything in particular that you're looking for in terms of developers or testers?
Well, everything. We're really looking to grow the team in every aspect. So people to help with documentation, people to help with testing, people to help with software development, people to help with evangelizing, people to help with fundraising. There's a whole variety of things that people can do, and that we're quite happy to work with anyone that shares the vision that we have of getting people connected and communicating anywhere, anytime.
Now, one of the reasons, your main reasons for developing this, is disaster recovery and disaster management, especially that immediate stage after, like with Haiti, when everything is basically collapsed. Have you had much interest, or have you had talks with the not-for-profits who go in after these disasters, or the sort of disaster recovery organisations?
Absolutely. So there's one very large, well-known one in particular that we are working with quite closely, and in actual fact, we're hoping that February, March next year we'll actually go on a trial. They have a training field exercise.
Mm-hmm.
That we're hoping to supply technology to, and observe how they're using that, and we're really looking forward to that. Partly we hope that it will actually be useful as it is, but also we'll get a whole pile of valuable feedback as to what we actually need to do and change and improve and add and possibly even get rid of features to make it as effective as possible.
It's always nice to get a real world example.
Exactly. So one of the really distinguishing things in what we've done is that you keep using your existing phone number. Even though there's no access to carrier, there's no supporting infrastructure at all, we have the protocols that enable that to happen. Because in that acute phase, I mean, say, for instance, there was a disaster and, I don't know, the UN flew over the top and dropped phones out with cute little umbrellas, and you catch one in your hand and go, oh, wonderful, I have a phone again. Mm-hmm. And it works with some magic UN network. Even if that happened, they don't know what your phone number is, and so the thing will probably have some allocated phone number on it. And the trouble is, you go, okay, now I want to call my mum or my family and friends or whatever and make sure they're fine. Well, I've got no idea what their number is. They've got no idea what my number is, and you have this discoverability problem. So it's vital, in fact, that you actually use ordinary phone numbers for this, which is what we've done. Some quite creative thinking in how to solve that problem.
Okay, so then do people self-allocate their numbers with this system, or does it take? Yeah, go on.
So it gives you a random phone number if you don't choose one.
Yep.
But basically, you can choose any phone number you like, and so that the lowest level of assurance. Say, we've just picked our phone numbers in disaster, or whatever, with these happy little UN phones that have dropped from the air. That in that case, if you were to call me, you would get an indication that there is someone claiming to have the phone number, or in fact there may be more than one person, and you would kind of choose from the list, and it would be telling you that the identity of the person at the other end cannot be guaranteed by any means at all. And so you would make the call, and it would then be up to you to be sure that you were actually talking to me. So, you know, you might do like what the companies do. You know, what's your mother's maiden name? What's your date of birth? Or, you know, whatever it is that you know about me that you know that I can answer. And there's some other gear in there that we can do to make sure there's no man in the middle, so that you know that you're really talking to the person at the end of the line. And basically then you can go, well, yes, I think this really is the right person, so you can keep on talking and basically tell a phone to remember for next time that when you dial a number that this is the person you want to talk to.
How do you handle conflicts? People with the same number?
Multiple people?
Yeah.
Basically you get presented with a list, and because what we actually do is you have the phone number that you can set however you like, and each phone actually also has a randomly allocated, we call it a subscriber ID, even though there's not actually a subscription. So effectively, if you like, it's like a SIM number.
Yep.
And the phone numbers are tied to that. So when we authenticate one another, what we're actually saying is this subscriber ID and phone number go together.
Okay, so you're creating a unique ID.
Correct. The next time you ring the number, in actual fact, your phone locally on itself goes, that's this subscriber ID, and actually then uses that to establish the call. And the subscriber ID is actually a public key. So no one except the legitimate holder of that subscriber ID can actually prove that they have the number.
If you want to find out more about the Serval project, would like to help or donate resources, you can head over to www.servalproject, that's SERVAL project, one word, all one word, .org, and check things out. Now, these are just two examples of the maker spirit writ large. Last time we spoke to people who were doing things on a smaller scale. Paul was building his electric motorcycle, and the guys over at the Canberra UAV area, I mean, they were doing something similar, but on a smaller scale. Peter Franken and the Safecast crew, they're aiming bigger. They've taken that maker spirit and applied it to a real-world problem in such a way that it is going to have long-term real-world benefits, not just for the people in Tokyo and Japan, but around the world through their proposed worldwide crowdsourced radiation monitoring network. Can you imagine buying say if you like to keep track of the weather in your local area, you buy a weather station that you can plug your computer into, and it has an attachment which monitors radiation levels. You can send that information off to whatever they set up, and all of a sudden they are tracking things in a way that has never been done before. Dr. Gardner-Stephen and the Serval project are turning to the crowd to rebuild essential communication channels in areas completely cut off by disaster. And when I say they're turning to the crowd, they're actually turning to the people in the area. The local residents who have suffered through the disaster can start rebuilding their own communications networks. This can and will save lives and make immediate recovery process it's not going to make it immediate. It's not a silver bullet, but it will make things easier to handle. If you have communications, you're almost halfway there in fixing the problem. Not only that, but in a more mundane sense, this technology can be used to extend existing telecoms networks into areas where it is cost prohibitive. As Dr. Gardner-Stephen said, you look at a lot of, inner Africa, where it's prohibitively expensive to operate a mobile phone tower. But if you've got these cell phones which are running their own as mobile phone towers themselves, you can set up a network of these and enable so many more people. Well, that brings us to the end of another episode of Purser Explores the World. For our next episode, we're going to take a step away from the world of science and the maker spirit to explore one of the lesser-known sports in Australia, women's ice hockey. I'm going to be checking with Rocky Pageant, coach of the National Australian Women's Ice Hockey Team, and I'm also going to try and catch up with some of the veterans of the game in Australia. This should be out sometime in late December, maybe early January. We'll see how we go. Oh, and before I go, just a couple of notes. Firstly, I've created a Reddit for Angry Beanie related links. For those of you who don't know what Reddit is, it's essentially a link sharing site. but you can comment on the links and you can moderate and vote for them. I've created a section on that site for Angry Beanie and will be using it for a variety of different things, including the links that will come with this episode and previous episodes. In fact, you can find the links from previous episodes up there already. You can find it at www.reddit, that's reddit.com/r/Angry Beanie, one word. Or you can follow the link directly from the Angry Beanie website. Secondly, in the new year, I'm going to be introducing a couple of new shows to the Angry Beanie lineup. That's all I'm going to say for now, but needless to say, watch or listen to this space. Okay, that's it. We're done for another episode. I'm James Purser, and this has been Purser Explores the World.